Welcome to my long-term review of my SPB147J. Now all over YouTube you're gonna see a ton of reviews of this particular watch, but most reviewers tend to have the watch for maybe a few hours, a few days, or at the max a week or two before they put up their reviews. And this review comes from the perspective of somebody who's had this watch for almost 7-8 months now, and I've been wearing it almost every other day, so it's seen a lot of wrist time. So these are my views after having worn this watch for quite a few, for more than half a year, almost a couple of times a week. Now the first thing that I want to bring to your notice is everybody talks about just how polished and refined the finishing of this watch is. Well, guess what? Those sharp edges that you see there, they take dings like it's not funny. I think I got a small ding on the watch within the first couple days of wearing it, and so on and so forth. These sharp edges are terrible when it comes to hitting the watch against a door handle or getting in and out of things, and so on and so forth. Sure, the dye shield's coating does prevent scratches, but what's the point of preventing scratches if your watch is going to get all dinged up? Having said that, this is a diver, and dive watches are all tool watches, so you should be prepared to get a few dings on your watch. Otherwise, don't buy a dive watch, go buy a Grand Seiko dress watch. Talking about the one thing that does drive people nuts about this watch is there's the Loom at 3 o'clock. The original version of this did not have the Loom at 3 o'clock, but then they came up with the new ISO standards, so Seiko had to put a Loom at 3 o'clock, which is outside the circular line of every other index marker. People who are bothered with it, I would tell them go get a life. Because if you know your Seiko watches, Seiko does both the variations. I looked at my 80s quartz divers, and there's one, and that's more classic. You realize there's no marker at the 3 o'clock mark. But guess what? The rarer version of this watch is the boy quartz diver, which was their unisex model. Because that only has the date and not the day, they happily put a nice marker at the 3 o'clock mark. So there's nothing new about having markers at the 3 o'clock mark. Seiko sometimes does put them, and in case of the SPB147, because it only has a date and not the day, there is plenty of place to put that marker. Now, one of my favorite commentators on my channel, Inspector, would say it should be between 4 and 5. And to Inspector, I would say, yes, you're right. You should go work for Seiko because you obviously have a better idea about the designing of Seiko watches than some of the designers at Seiko have. But let's talk about the design. So this is about 40.5 millimeter in width. It's 47.6 lug to lug. And the thickness is about 13 to 14 millimeters. It has a sapphire crystal that has a slight dome to it, and it does have an anti-reflective coating, which means you can see, as you can see right now, you can just clearly see through that glass. Because it's domed, you do see reflections on the top, on the surface of the crystal, especially if you're in a car or something. But the AR coating really does seem to do its job fairly well. The brown dial, which is what makes this watch so unique, is really very, very pretty. I think the real beauty of this watch is in the fact that its dial is so unique. You don't really have brown divers, even though these 80s watches did come close with their gilt that you see there. In fact, all these 80s quartz watches had gilt hands. So gilt hands is fairly common for Seiko, and this has the same gilt hands. People have spoken about how the hands have a sharp bevel, but you can't really see the bevel. What you see are the huge lines of loom that the hands have, and that's great. That's I like the fact that there's loom and it's easy to read. It does have a very nice coppery sunburst, almost brassy sunburst on the dial. And that sunburst is something that you can read in almost every light condition, be it daylight or right now it's under a white LED light. In fact, talking about that loom reminds me that the loom on this has a blue loom. It does not glow, say, green like the typical Seiko looms will glow. And as a result, that glow is substantially diminished in the blue. It's actually quite disappointing just how poor the glow is. So the only light source in this room is right now the light that I'm using to shoot this video on. And I'm going to turn off the light just to prove to you just how bad the loom on this is. And of course in this light you can see that it's the bluish almost looks like green. But within a few seconds you will start realizing just how dim the loom, the blue loom on the SPB147 is compared to the conventional Prospex turtle. And I wish Seiko hadn't done that. I get the fact that the 145 and the 147 are their more vintage tropical dial finish with the grey blue, the grey green or the brown. But seriously, I would have rather just gone with a non-cream colored loom just to have gotten a really bright loom display. So let me turn this back on. Okay, get ready for that. So yeah, it really does hit you. So let's get rid of this. The one thing actually while I have the turtle out here is of late Seiko has been using these stainless steel keepers with a nice large Seiko name on it, followed with the buckle also having the Seiko branding. And as some of you have seen in an earlier video of mine, this one also came with that fairly loud Seiko keeper, the stainless steel keeper. I obviously got rid of it within the first hour that I had the watch. In fact, I never wore this watch with the stainless steel keeper because I just wear it with a silicone keeper, and that just works towards keeping these things subtle. The subtlety is a very key part of a dive watch. Dive watches are not loud watches. In fact, the turtle out here with its matte dial is testament to the fact that dive watches tend to be fairly low profile tool watches. So how does this do? Well, I don't think this watch is necessarily that low profile. People do definitely notice the watch when you're out and about. It has a very high level of fit and finish. As you can see, the coin edge bezel is sharp as I run my fingers on it. The bezel has this radial brushing with inscribed numbers, again with that cream tropical look to it, a look that is very much in fashion these days. It does have a great movement. The 6R35 movement gives 70 hours of power reserve. I've never really kept the watch for 70 hours. I think I wear it every other day, so it's done pretty well. It loses about 10 to 30 seconds of time. Sometimes it was fast when I first got it. So I think it depends on the position that I keep it, but it is not a very accurate watch. Again, if you want an accurate watch, go get a Grand Seiko because it's a Seiko automatic. It will lose time. Now let's wrap up the review. The one thing that I do want to talk about is the tire track silicone strap this comes with. I mean, Seiko used to have rubber straps in the 1960s, but nowadays it's all silicone, and that's great because these silicone straps are obviously much nicer than rubber straps. And I'm very happy that Seiko put a tire track strap like it had back in the 1960s, which keeps it very, very legit. And as I've said earlier, if you have a rubber strap, there is no way you will ever wear a Jubilee bracelet on your diver. So anyway, that's my review. Please let me know what you think about your experiences with the watch. And please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to build my subscriber base, and whenever you click on that subscribe button, it does help me a lot. Thank you very much, and I will see you on another video.